I'm Damien Fowler.
And I'm Eileen Sliffring.
And welcome to this edition of The Current Podcast.
This week, we're delighted to bring Dave Raggio to the podcast. Dave is the Vice President of SMB MediaLabs, a B2B media network that sits within Intuit, known for business products like TurboTax, QuickBooks, Credit Karma, and MailChimp.
Now, Dave developed the idea of SMB MediaLab, which leans on the first-party data from the millions of people who use QuickBooks, and it provides small businesses with the intelligence they need to reach their customers across channels like audio and CTV.
We start out by asking Dave about the origins of SMB MediaLabs.
It really came from, honestly, my personal frustration in trying to reach SMBs for what I'm calling my day job. So I was hired 4 years ago at Intuit to lead QuickBooks acquisition marketing, and I actually still hold that position today. My entire career has been consumer brands. So I was with North Face before this, spent a lot of time agency side working on a variety of clients across CPG and e-com retail. And when I got to Intuit, I tried to essentially apply the same data sources and tactics that worked very well for me in the consumer world, and was met very quickly with the reality that SMB data is very hard to find. And when you do find it, the accuracy is just not great. So, I have a friend that works in an agency that has always told me that at the top, you have enterprise level data, which is pretty high quality. At the bottom, you have your consumer data, which is abundant and high quality. But between, there's a big void, and that's pretty much where all SMB data lives. So it started off kind of as just a joke internally that I really wish there was a company like QuickBooks that I could partner with and buy media through that would allow me to find not only the scale of audiences that Intuit has, but also the depth of knowledge about how those businesses are operated and run. And then that joke kind of became a realization that it is a need for other advertisers that Intuit could very much fill, and very uniquely fill as well, just considering kind of the breadth and depth of information that we have on our small business owners. So that was the start of it. But of course, we wanted to make sure that we were doing it in a way that was beneficial to our customers and done in a privacy safe way. So that was kind of the start of the journey, was just the realization that we had something that advertisers would be interested in, but we also wanted to make sure that it was something that benefited our customers as well.
That void that you talk about in the middle between enterprise level data and consumer data is quite surprising, isn't it, that there wasn't anything there for those small businesses? I know that 99% of all businesses are SMBs, so that's a huge amount of data that's not being used.
Yep.
So was it a surprising moment when you saw that and you thought, oh, this is an opportunity?
Yeah, there are small pockets of data where you can get very narrow in. It's just not scalable. So that was the sort of challenge. So you can go to a lot of individual professional sites, but the reality is the world of media is not built around the business that you run. It's built around you as a person. So stitching those two parameters together, because, as QuickBooks growth, we're looking for specific types of business problems. And a lot of these small business owners are not active on professional networks. If they have profiles there, they're not looking at them on a regular basis or updating them. So they kind of become in the shadows, like the SMB part of the data and the targeting capabilities and the need state from the business that they run sits behind their sort of consumer profiles. So it was a surprise when I first joined, but logically after a little while, I was like, okay, that makes sense of why we're not able to find the business traits and qualities that we were able to.
Yeah, that makes sense.
How would you go about describing the value of these small businesses and the data that their advertisers are trying to use to reach this audience?
Yeah, great question. And there's a couple different layers of knowledge that we have on our customer base, and we're not unlocking all of those just yet. So we want to, again, going back to want to do what's right by our customers. We want to make sure that all the information that we're collecting is something that they would expect us to collect, that they have full control over their ability to participate in this, and that we're only partnering with advertisers that have the best intent for our customers. With that, we are layering on top of ad buys data that seems to already exist in the market, but is much more accurate. So that was one of the sort of uphill battles that we've had in the early stages of this. So things like industry, age, revenue, employee count. These are things that on the surface appear to exist in other third-party data sources. But again, being on the other side of the buying of this one, I see how wildly off some of those data sources can be and the assumptions that they have about a small business. So what we're adding onto that is just a very, very deterministic one-to-one knowledge and accuracy that didn't exist. So we eliminate a lot of waste that comes with using some of the other data providers or even just kind of doing broad market advertising. So that's kind of the main value prop. That said, we are working with our legal and privacy team. Our executive sponsor is actually the head of privacy, so that should tell everyone a little bit about how serious we're taking this. But we're also thinking about with our customers, what value can we add to them if we continue to go into what we're calling transactional type data, if we're able to go the next step deeper. And the reason for that is every business on the surface may look the same in an industry, size, employee count, but how they run their business could be very different. So if you're a construction company that's in the same region as another construction company, roughly same revenue, roughly same employee count, doesn't mean that you invest completely different in marketing. And you maybe think about your supply chain very differently. What that allows us to do is actually find need states for our customers and be able to pair them with the advertisers that might be able to serve solutions for them in those need states. So that's kind of the next wave that we're working on. It's something that we haven't done yet, but we're hoping to unlock for our advertisers soon.
Yeah, that's definitely a good example. I feel like in such a new company like this, and I know you refer to you guys as like a retail media network, although you're not exactly a retail media. So it's definitely hard to describe, I would assume, to other B2B businesses exactly what to do and how your like first party data, and you essentially use QuickBooks primarily, right? How they can use that data to their advantage. Is there like another example that you can give how advertiser would use your media network in order to reach their audience?
Yeah, and you mentioned that, we've been using the term retail media network, but we're very much not a retail media network. So we do not have owned and operated inventory, and that's by design. You don't start a business because you're passionate about bookkeeping in most cases. So we're leaning into, as a company, AI and automation to make sure that we're trying to reduce the amount of time that a customer has to spend in our platforms in order to get their work done. So throwing ads in there will slow that down. It's not something that, someone that's already paying for subscription would want to have. That said, there are potentially ways that we've been looking at that provide additional value to that. That said, by not having owned and operated, I think that we accidentally fell into what I'm calling kind of the next wave of retail media networks. So we are more of an audience network that can be layered on to any part of your ad buy that's programmatic. So we have partnerships with the Trade Desk, with Vizio, with DV360, with Meta, and we're agnostic to inventory source. We just allow the advertiser, whatever their KPIs are across the board, to just get more efficient and more focused on just the right people. And that's been, again, slightly different than what most retail media networks are going, but attending a bunch of conferences, that seems to be really the hot topic of your owned and operated inventory is great. It is the last bottom of the funnel that you're able to really leverage. We are able to address full funnel campaigns with that audience targeting.
That's very interesting. What kind of advertisers in this space are keen to take advantage of this opportunity to reach these millions of small businesses?
Yeah, so that's been one of the larger surprising things when we started this up. So we built this assuming insurance, banking, credit cards, those would be the sort of the very close in, some of the software SaaS providers. That has been very true for us. That's where we're seeing a lot of interest. But we've had a lot of consumer brands coming to us. There seems to be a wave of interest in small business as a segment for a lot of advertisers. So we've had one of the largest CPG brands approach us. I worked at Method for a while, so I know firsthand that shipping a bottle of hand soap is very expensive, and it's only a $3 bottle of hand soap, but it's mostly water and fragile. So you're upside down in your e-com costs. So the area where e-com works really well for CPG brands is concentrates in large formats. And the normal consumer do not want that. It is very profitable to go that direction. So they reached out to us, same thing with one of the largest beverage companies, reached out to us because they want to be in more restaurants, more independent restaurants than the chain restaurants. So it's been a little surprising across the board of who's really approached us. And some of these non-traditional B2B, as you would think about it, are really the ones that have a ton of interest.
Yeah, I must say, it seems like B2B is on some kind of upward trending line right now.
Yeah.
We are seeing an increase across like all channels, I feel like. Maybe that's due to like, I don't know, the rise of LinkedIn or just more businesses coming forward and being created in general, maybe the pandemic even. I don't know. It's curious because I do feel like even channels like CTV, for instance, there's a lot more B2B kind of marketing happening.
Yeah, we're seeing the same thing, and we're excited that we're kind of showing up at the right time for that. I think our hypothesis on that is very much correct. There was a small business boom during the pandemic, but a lot of advertisers, I think, have started to kind of run out of scale and saturation that they can have amongst the sort of consumer. And this is an entirely new audience with tremendous spending power that you can talk about different products that you wouldn't want to put on a Super Bowl spot. The CPG brand's not going to run a large format concentrate ad in the Super Bowl, but there's now a new path and a new audience that is kind of untapped. And we're also seeing that also in the marketing space. So a lot of the major social networks and ad providers, their next target is all the SMBs because they've got so much share of wallet amongst the enterprise level brands that their next growth area is going to have to come from the long tail of SMBs. So we're happy because we truly feel like we are the most accurate and best way to reach those SMBs. So we're hoping that everything kind of comes together.
Is there some kind of nuance in terms of the channels that advertisers trying to reach businesses use versus more traditional, you might say, consumer channels? I mean, obviously, consumers are also business owners and business owners are consumers, but is there a different way that you're thinking or that advertisers are thinking about leveraging the data that you're providing?
We've not seen that. So kind of going back to the challenge that brought this whole thing to life is that the line between them as a small business owner and them as just a person is almost indistinguishable between the two of those. So the nice thing is because it's programmatic, wherever they happen to be, we're able to find them and able to serve them relevant advertising at that point. I think that the majority of channel selection will come down to the objective of the campaign. So we had a major global logistics company that was very focused on brand advertising, and we were running them on connected TV with Vizio. We were running them on some digital video formats. We had another SaaS provider that was very focused on cost per leads, and we much heavier on the social and programmatic display side of things. So it's really more of what's the objective dictates kind of the channel mix itself. But in terms of are there subtle nuances or specific places we go? Not really. We kind of just follow the sort of trends that we're seeing with those small business owners.
Now, you've described SMB MediaLabs as the next wave of retail networks, which is very interesting. You've also said it's a more open network than some others. Can you describe why that is?
Yeah, so I would say we're not the next wave. I think that we are ahead and riding the next wave. So I don't say that we are defining it by any means, but we're open in the fact that we're not relying on our own inventory. So we can go pretty much anywhere. And if an advertiser comes to us and they have a specific DSP that they really want to work with, we can onboard those DSPs if they're not already in our network. So a big part of our product is really making sure that we have the largest breadth of inventory sources and partnerships available, that we can develop campaigns in partnership with the advertiser and the agencies that actually can span wherever they believe that their customers are or whatever their objectives are. So that's the open part of what we're doing. And because of that also, there's just easier capabilities for them to measure it because they're already using a lot of the DSPs and platforms that they're using for their normal campaigns. So we're not any sort of walled garden that has hidden metrics behind the scene, which I know is also, a challenge for a lot of retail media networks as well.
Going about your own advertising for this network, how are you basically scaling it?
Getting the word out and getting people to try it. So I think we're in month 8 now, and we've had a number of large advertisers come in. The data and the audience targeting is performing extremely well. That is something that was a concern of mine going in, that is there enough people that are interested in SMBs? And we already talked about how that has been something that we've been able to check that box and say, yes, there is a ton of interest from advertisers across the board. The second one was, have I convinced myself that our audience quality is as good as it is. And the data that's come in has shown that it's performing extremely well, both on brand metrics and on cost per action. So our goal right now is to just have as many conversations and just do as many tests as possible and let the advertiser see how well it performs comparatively to other things.
I guess the next question would be, how well does it perform? What kind of data insights are you getting back to provide to advertisers?
Yeah, so we've done some disco studies on brand ones, and we're seeing on average 30 to 40% increase in brand metrics, which is huge. That was actually outside of what we anticipated and hoped for on that one. And I think probably the big one was when we've run some cost per lead campaigns for SaaS cloud service, we cut their CPLs by 75%. So just eliminating the inaccuracy and focusing your spend on deterministic, direct connections with those customers has worked extremely well.
Yeah, that's a high fidelity audience. I like that phrase.
Yeah.
I guess we have to have a question about AI, right? We have to talk about AI. In April, Intuit introduced an AI assistant to its core product. In TurboTax, it's going to shorten the time to file taxes. Credit Karma, users get personalized financial information advice, and users can generate marketing content in MailChimp. How are you and SMB MediaLabs using AI?
Yeah, so as part of what we've built, we are a managed service. So we are doing the buys and executing for the time being. That is something that is very difficult to scale because for us, it is core to make sure that the media that we're buying not only is targeted, but it's performing. So there's a lot of optimizations that we want to be able to make recommendations on and act on. It's hard to do that. Our goal is to have hundreds of advertisers. You can't optimize hundreds of advertisers. So there are tools that we are bringing on board that actually use AI to understand how the various campaigns are performing, are able to serve up some sort of triggered recommendations based off of that. And that allows our team to scale and really make sure that everything that we're doing is hitting the benchmarks and exceeding the benchmarks that we want them to do across all of our advertisers.
One question, I guess, from that is the actual marketing of SMB MediaLabs. How do you think about that?
Well, the marketing of SMB MediaLabs is a lot of conversations like this. So I'm a little bit on a podcast tour. I'm going to be at Cannes. So we do have a space in the Media Link tent at Cannes where we're going to be having a number of meetings, speaking engagements. It is different enough that it does require a little bit of explanation and, in full transparency. There's an added hurdle that, as it stands now, we are a managed service. So it adds complexity to what a traditional. We are not doing the model where we just park our data and anyone can go and pull it like through a marketplace. We still have to control, and that's because we want to have the highest bar possible for how we control our data. So it just takes more conversations, but we are doing some programmatic media buying, and we're doing some digital out of home in the elevators of a lot of the major agencies in New York City. So we're trying to really focus in on both the agencies and the advertisers that would be interested in something like this.
And that's it for this edition of The Current Podcast. We'll be back next week, so stay tuned.
Current Podcast theme is by Love and Caliber. The Current team includes Kat Vesey and Sydney Cairns.
And remember,
the world of media is not built around the business that you run. It's built around you as a person.
I'm Damien.
And I'm Elise.
And we'll see you next time. And if you like what you hear, please subscribe and leave us a review. Also, tune in to our other podcast, The Current Report.